What if the most powerful English practice tool you have isn't an app, a textbook, or a tutor? It's already running inside your mind right now. Welcome back to English Unleashed Lab. I'm so glad you're here today, because what we're going to explore together is something almost every learner overlooks. It's free, it's always available, and you can use it anywhere. On the bus, in the shower, waiting in line. We're talking about using your own thinking space as a personal English conversation gym. Here's the truth. Your brain never really goes quiet. From the moment you open your eyes, your inner voice is running. I should get up. What am I going to eat today? I forgot to reply to that message. These micro thoughts are constantly flowing through you. So the question becomes, what if some of those thoughts happened in English? That single shift can quietly transform your fluency. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how to make it happen. Let's begin with the most natural starting point, everyday situations you already move through. Think about ordering a drink. Before you even walk into a coffee shop, you could mentally rehearse that interaction. Picture the person behind the counter smiling and saying, "Hi there, what can I get for you?" You respond, "Could I get a medium latte, please?" They ask, "Do you want any milk alternatives?" You say, "Oat milk would be great, thanks." They follow up, "Eating in or taking out?" You answer, "Taking out, please." That short exchange, 5 lines, is a complete conversation. Practice it mentally before you arrive, and when the real moment comes, your brain already has a map. You've been there before, in your mind. Now here's something many learners experience, and maybe you'll recognize this too. You understand English well. You can read a paragraph, follow a video, even catch most of what someone says in a fast conversation. But the moment someone asks you a direct question, something like, "What did you get up to over the weekend?" everything seems to freeze. You know the words. You know the grammar, but there's this gap between understanding and producing, and it can feel like a wall. Why does that happen? Because understanding a language and speaking it in real time are two very different skills. Comprehension is passive, speaking is active, and active skills need active rehearsal. That's exactly what mental practice gives you, a space where you can build and rebuild responses at your own pace, with zero pressure. Your mind is a judgment-free practice zone. Nobody is watching. Nobody is timing you. You can draft a sentence, scrap it, and try again. You can stumble over a phrase and nobody hears it. This is where confidence gets built, quietly and consistently. Start with scenes from your ordinary day. You don't need to imagine complex debates or professional negotiations. Begin small. Imagine bumping into your neighbor while taking out the recycling. They say, "Morning. Rough night?" You say, "A little." The kids were up late. They say, I remember those days." Have a good one. You say, "You too, thanks." Simple, right? But notice what you practiced. Natural rhythm, a response to an unexpected follow-up, and a warm closing. These are the soft skills of conversation that don't show up in grammar workbooks. Now picture yourself at a grocery store. You need something you can't locate. You approach a store employee and say, "Excuse me, do you know where the pasta sauce is?" The employee says, "Sure, that's on aisle 4, near the bottom shelf." You say, "Perfect. Thank you so much." The employee says, "No problem. Enjoy your day." Done. A real useful zero-stress interaction, practiced before it happens. What about public spaces? Imagine you're at a train station, and the person next to you looks confused by the departure board. They ask you, "Sorry, do you know if the 2:15 to the city has been delayed?" You answer, "I'm not sure, but the board usually updates every few minutes." They say, "Thanks, I'll keep an eye on it. You say, hope you make it on time. Did you notice something? In each of these examples, you weren't just practicing your own lines. You were also imagining what the other person says. That's a key technique. When you only rehearse your own side of a conversation, you train yourself to speak but not to listen and respond. Real conversations require both. So when you practice inside your head, inhabit both roles. Be the customer and the cashier. Be the traveler and the local giving directions. Be the job applicant and the interviewer. Let's try one together. Imagine you're checking into a hotel for the first time. The front desk attendant greets you and says, "Good evening, welcome. Do you have a booking with us?" You reply, "Yes, I do. The name is Jordan Clark." They say, "Let me pull that up. Could I ask to see some ID?" You answer, "Of course, here's my passport." They say, "Brilliant. You're booked in for 2 nights and a double room. Is there anything you'd like to know about the hotel?" You say, "Actually, yes. Is the gym open early in the morning?" They reply, "It opens at 6. You say, "That's perfect, thank you." That exchange had 9 turns. You navigated a check-in, answered a request for documents, and asked a relevant follow-up question. If you can rehearse that in your mind before travel, you'll walk into that lobby already familiar with the flow. Now I want to address something that trips up a lot of learners: the pressure to sound advanced. There's this idea that simple sentences aren't impressive, that you need complex vocabulary to be taken seriously. Let me push back on that. Clear, direct language is not beginner language. It's effective language. If someone asks why you missed a meeting, you don't need to construct an elaborate explanation. You can simply say, "I had an unexpected personal situation come up. I'm sorry I couldn't make it." That's complete. That's professional. Simple English, used well, lands better than complicated English that makes the listener work harder to understand you. Here's another technique that makes mental rehearsal even more powerful. Use what language teachers call filler phrases, or buying time expressions. These are short phrases that give your brain a moment to catch up with your mouth. Things like, "That's actually a great point," or "Let me think about that for a second," or "I'd say it really depends on the situation." These aren't filler in a negative sense. They're natural conversational tools that every fluent speaker uses. The most natural speakers aren't the fastest ones. They're the ones who pause with confidence. Imagine someone asks you, "If you could relocate to any country, where would you go and why?" Instead of panicking, you start with, That's a tough one. I think it really depends." Then you buy yourself another beat. Then you answer, "Honestly, I'd probably choose somewhere with a warm climate and a different culture from my own, maybe somewhere in Southeast Asia, but I don't think I'd want to be away from my family permanently." That response sounds thoughtful, unhurried, and natural, because it is. And here's where preparation really pays off. Think about something coming up in the next day or two that makes you a little nervous. Maybe a doctor's visit, a call to customer service, or a job interview. Use the hours before it to run a mental simulation. Let's say you have a medical appointment. The doctor walks in and asks, "So what's brought you in today?" You say, "I've had a persistent sore throat for about 10 days, and I've also been feeling unusually tired." The doctor asks, "Any fever or headaches?" You say, "A mild headache once or twice, but no real fever." The doctor asks, "Are you currently on any medication?" You say, "Just a standard vitamin supplement, nothing prescribed." The doctor says, "Okay, let me take a look." You may not hear those exact words in the real appointment, but here's what you will have: a vocabulary set already active in your brain, a sense of how those types of questions unfold, and a calmer nervous system because the terrain feels familiar. The same principle works for interviews. If the hiring manager opens with, "Tell me a bit about yourself," You might respond, "Sure, I've been working in digital marketing for about 3 years, and I particularly enjoy the analytics side of things. I'm looking for a role where I can grow that skill set while contributing to a team." Then they ask, "Why are you drawn to our company specifically?" You say, "I've followed your brand for a while. I appreciate that you focus on sustainability alongside the commercial side." None of that needed to be memorized word for word. You prepared the core ideas, and the actual language emerged naturally. That's the goal. You don't memorize scripts. You build familiarity, and familiarity becomes fluency. Now let's talk about how to keep your practice fresh without it feeling like a chore. Instead of inventing a brand new scenario every day, take one situation and run variations. Say you're ordering at a restaurant. First time you order a pasta dish and ask for no cheese. Second time you order a salad and ask what the dressing options are. Third time there's a problem. They're out of the item you wanted, and you handle it gracefully. "Oh, no worries. What would you recommend instead?" Each version uses the same conversational skeleton, but tests you in slightly different ways. First, you practice ordering. Then you practice asking questions. Then you practice handling the unexpected. That last one is especially valuable. Real life rarely goes exactly as rehearsed. So training your mind to adapt is just as important as training it to prepare. You can also experiment with varying the other person in your mental scenario. Imagine a relaxed, friendly shop assistant. Then imagine a hurried one who speaks quickly and doesn't elaborate. Imagine asking directions from someone who gives you too much information all at once. These small variations sharpen your ability to track, adapt, and recover, all in the privacy of your own thoughts. Once you've practiced silently, take it to the next level. Say it out loud. Your mind's ear and your mouth are trained separately, and both need work. Here's a method that works well. First, form the sentence in your head. Feel it before you speak it. Then say it in a near whisper. Then say it again at full, natural volume. "I'd like to make an appointment for Friday afternoon." Whisper it. Then say it normally. When you hear yourself speaking, you'll notice things you wouldn't catch in silent rehearsal. A stumble, an unusual pause, a word that doesn't feel comfortable in your mouth yet. That's useful information. That's a clue about exactly what to focus on next. Record yourself occasionally, too. You don't need to listen back to the whole thing. Just ask yourself 3 quick questions. Did my meaning come through clearly? Were there any very long, awkward pauses? Is there one sentence I want to say better next time? Then record again. The improvement from one attempt to the next is often more significant than people expect. And please, don't confuse fluency with perfection. Native speakers trip over words, repeat themselves, use placeholder sounds like and you know, and restart sentences. Fluency doesn't mean speaking without any errors. Fluency means continuing, keeping the conversation alive even when things don't come out perfectly the first time. That brings up one more skill worth rehearsing mentally: what to say when a word escapes you. Because it will happen. Even advanced learners hit blank walls sometimes. The secret isn't to freeze. It's to redirect. You might say, "I'm blanking on the exact word right now, but I mean that thing you use to boil water for tea." The other person says, "A kettle?" You say, "Yes, exactly, thank you." So anyway, as I was saying, conversation preserved. Nobody uncomfortable. And you've just demonstrated a very natural, very human communication skill. Practice that recovery too. Make it part of your mental rehearsal. Deliberately imagine moments where you don't know the word and practice talking around it until the meaning lands. It's a skill, and like any skill, it gets sharper with repetition. How long should all this take? Here's the honest answer: not long. 5 to 10 minutes a day, done consistently, is more valuable than an occasional hour-long session. The key word is consistently. A daily small habit rewires your brain far more effectively than sporadic intensive effort. In the morning, run through your plans for the day in English. On your lunch break, imagine ordering at a new restaurant. In the evening, narrate your day to an imaginary friend. What happened? How you felt? What surprised you? These moments don't require extra time. They happen in the spaces that already exist in your day. And here's something to remember when you feel like you're going in circles with the same scenarios. Repetition is the point, not a problem. Your brain builds fluency through repeated activation of the same patterns. The more familiar a conversational route becomes, the faster your brain can travel it under pressure. Try this. Take the question, "What did you do yesterday?" and answer it differently for 3 straight days. On the first day, keep it simple. On the second day, add more detail. On the third day, include a reaction or a feeling. You've used the same question 3 times, but you've built 3 different layers of response depth. That's real progression. Of course, mental rehearsal has limits, and it's important to be honest about that. Nothing fully replaces conversation with real human beings. Real people interrupt. Real people use slang you've never heard. Real people change the subject without warning. The goal of silent practice isn't to avoid real conversation. It's to make you more ready for it when it comes. Use this technique as a bridge, not a hiding place. The more you rehearse mentally, the more equipped you'll be to handle the spontaneous, unpredictable, genuinely alive experience of talking to someone in English. So here's your next step. Not tomorrow, today. Think of one situation you'll face in the next 24 hours. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It could be as ordinary as picking up a parcel or asking a colleague for a favor. Run through that conversation mentally before it happens. Play both roles. Keep the language simple. Let yourself stumble a little inside your head. That's where it's safe to stumble. And then walk into that moment knowing you've already been there once. If this video gave you a new way to think about your practice, I'd love for you to hit the like button right now. It genuinely helps English Unleashed Lab reach more learners just like you who are working hard and ready to grow. And if you have a specific situation you want to practice in the comments, drop it below. I might just turn it into a future episode. Until next time, keep the English running, keep the conversations flowing, and remember, every thought you have is an opportunity. Use it.